Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the Rose Technics QT9 mk3, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank Rose Technics for providing the QT9 mk3 for a review. To greatly appreciate it. Rose Technics, you rock. Alright, so the Rose Technics QT9 mk3. This will set you back $290 from your bank account, and it is currently on sale for $160 through the Rose Technics website. The QT9 mk3 is a 5-driver hybrid. It has 1 dynamic for the bass and 4 balanced armatures for the mids and the treble. 18 ohms of impedance, 104 decibels of sensitivity, and a frequency response range of 20 Hz to 20 kHz. The Rose Technics QT9 mk3 comes in this gray brownish colored box. You get a big huge 9 on front and some branding. On the back side, you get some information and then a little bit of branding and specs on the sides. Sliding off the outer sleeve, and you're greeted by a black box that says Rose on it. This is pretty typical of most Rose Technics IEMs. Opening it up, and you have some paperwork over here that tell you a little bit about the QT9. And then you have a carrying case and a bunch of accessories. So let's show you those accessories. You get a 1/4-inch adapter. You get a MMCX removal tool. Thankfully, Rose Technics gives 2 options of the QT9 mk3. You can either get it with MMCX or with 2-pin. We have the 2-pin connection to review. Rose Technics also provides a dongle. So you get the R2 550. That is included with the QT9 mk3. And then you also get a box of tips. These ones are wide bore tips. And then you get small, medium, and large of these silicone tips that are purple stemmed. You get 1 pair of dual flange tips. And you get 1 pair of foam tips. The QT9 mk3 also includes a carrying case that is grayish. You have some branding on the front, and you open it up, and there's room for your QT9 mk3 to sit. There's a little pocket up top here. Very nice hard shell. I like the shape of it and the size of it. And it's definitely going to protect QT9. Only thing I wish is that there was some sort of magnetic latch or a little strap or something to hold it so it doesn't flop open while inside your bag. Overall though, very nice case, very well built. The QT9 itself looks like this. Extremely small. Got that similar grayish brownish colored faceplate with the body. It is very, very small and lightweight. Got a little bit of branding on each faceplate, but for the most part, pretty plain looking IEM. Extremely small. And then you have a rather aggressive angle and a somewhat short nozzle. Before we move on from that, let's talk about the cable. So the cable here has the 2-pin connection and decent ear hooks, enough tension to hold everything in place. And then fabric cable, which tangles and twists and it never really loses curve. It's not very loose feeling. It has this tightness to it and stiffness. I wish it was a little bit more supple, I guess would be the word. I just wish it was more soft and easier to control. It does tend to twist and tangle. And then you have a cinch that does stay in place. Very small split. And then a braid going into your termination, which is rather large. This is a 4.4. You can get it with other terminations. And just like the above the split, this cable is very stiff and tight, and it just never really loses its curve. It's just kind of it's not really my favorite cable. It's not a bad sounding cable. It just doesn't ever feel like quality, especially for the $290 asking price of the QT9 Mark III. The QT9 Mark III is fairly comfortable to wear. I find that no matter what tip I was using, for the most part, they all fit me very well. The only ones that didn't fit me well were these very short, shallow foam tips that Rose Technics included. I could not get them to fit in my ears properly, so I actually use sonic foam tips, and I'll put a link in the description for these. I find that these work a whole lot better for me. Inserting them in my ears, I find that the QT9 Mark III does a good job with isolation of outside noises, and it's probably somewhere about 66% of outside noises being blocked with foam tips. With the silicone tips, it takes a major hit, and they're probably somewhere about 50-55% of outside noises being blocked. But the sonic foam tips do a really good job of sealing out outside noises, and I find that they're extremely comfortable. I can wear them for hours without any issues. Even with that more aggressive angle that the shell has, I find that the foam tips make these extremely comfortable. The other tips that are included, let's put these back on here, don't do as good of a job with comfort or isolation of outside noises. The dual flange tips really didn't fit me very well, even though they isolated noise. They just weren't very comfortable, and I couldn't wear them for as long as I could with the foam tips. The purple stemmed silicone tips fit me quite well, but I found that sonically they were not very pleasurable. I found that those purple tips made the QT9 Mark III to be very aggressive and super shouty in the upper mids and lower treble regions. And it just was very piercing to my ears, and I couldn't listen to them for more than maybe one song before my ears were saying, get these out and get these out now. The sonic foam tips were the most pleasurable to listen to. I did find that it added in some note weight and tamed those upper mids and lower treble regions a little bit, and they're more pleasurable to listen to. So I highly recommend foam tips with the QT9 Mark III. Overall, the build of them is nice and small, lightweight. Cable could be more improved, just a little stiff and tangly and twisty. And you got to use those foam tips. But overall, it's a pretty well built IEM. It does seem to be a little bit kind of lackluster for the price point of $290 though, but it does what it needs to, which is comfort. And moving on to the R2 550 that was included. I did not like this pairing whatsoever with the QT9 Mark III. I found that it was extremely bright and very thin note weight, and it just was not pleasurable at all. My ears were getting fatigued rather quickly. Did not matter what tips I had on, and what music I was listening to, and at what volume. This was not a pleasurable dongle pairing, and I'll have to try this dongle with some other IEMs and see, but with the way that it presents, being a very neutral analytical presentation as a dongle, it was very piercing with the QT9 Mark III. Other sources that I did enjoy the QT9 Mark III were ones that had a more warmer presentation and were not a cold analytical leaning. So for desktop, I preferred the X Duo XA02 and also the FIO K9. I found that the little bit of body weight and warmth that those DACs and amps add in was very pleasurable and helped to tame and control those uppers a little bit. Using something that was more neutral and analytical leaning, like the Mytek Liberty DAC 2, really brought out that piercing upper mids and lower treble regions of the QT9 Mark III, and they were not very pleasurable to listen to. Dongle wise, I found the same thing. Dongles like the Hibby FC3 that are a more neutral leaning and have a more little bit colder leaning presentation to them were very fatiguing with the QT9 Mark III. Something that was a little bit on the warmer side was more pleasurable and was a little bit more acceptable to listen to for longer listenings. One thing of note, it does not matter what source you're using, higher volume levels will be painful and fatiguing. The QT9 Mark III sounds the best at lower listening volumes. It is very sensitive to that. And so if you like to listen to your music loud, the QT9 Mark III is going to make you pay for it. The QT9 Mark III from Rose Technics. How's it sound? So the QT9 Mark III's bass is different. Sub bass, there's nice rumble and grumble. It's not the most emphatic and the most noticeable of sub basses, but you can get some there when called upon in the track. Mid bass and upper bass are tucked, and they really don't have a whole lot of impact and a whole lot of slam and punch and kick. There's a little bit there, just enough to kind of keep things moving along, but it could definitely use some more. And I find that the note weight is a little bit too thin in the bass, and I do wish I had a little bit more emphatic, impactful type of sound. And it just gives you all of the information, but doesn't really portray it in a very powerful and fulfilling type of way. Note weight is thin, tone and timbre is natural. So you get this nice presentation of the technicalities, but you're missing the presentation part, the gumption of the music. And then detail retrieval is pretty good for the price point. Not anything excessively good. It's not going to be like the best thing you've ever heard for the price point, but it's also not going to be, oh man, I wish there was more details. You're going to get everything that you should get in this price point. It's pretty average for its price. Resolution wise, same thing. It's not going to be the best of the best, but it's not going to be the worst of the worst. It's somewhere in between. I find that the bass does okay with technicalities. You're not going to miss anything, but you're also not going to explore new things. And it's fairly well controlled, and it's snappy, and it's quick, and it gives you all the refinement that you want, just not the best of the best. I just wish that I had more note weight, more impact, punch, and slam. Going into the mids, the lower mids are recessed and very thin. And unfortunately, because of the tucked bass and that thin, recessed lower mids, overall the note weight throughout is just very thin, and there's just not a lot of body, and everything just kind of sounds airy and just floaty and doesn't have a lot of weight to it. There's not a lot of density to the QT9 Mark III. The bass gets impacted by it, and unfortunately the mids get impacted by it too. Lower mids just don't have a lot there. And then as you go into the upper mids become shouty and aggressive and sound even thinner and more airy, and you're just, and it just, everything sounds like it's floating in space without really having any positioning of holding it in place. It's just kind of floating around. I find that the upper mids are extremely shouty and very aggressive in its presentation. They're very forthright, and they can be extremely fatiguing. So if you're sensitive to upper mid shout and excessiveness, the QT9 Mark III probably won't be an IEM that you want to consider. I did find that using warmer sources and foam tips did add a little bit of note weight and helped with kind of giving them a little bit more density and a little bit more body to things, but they still have a very light sound presentation. Like the bass, the mids have decent tone and timbre. Unfortunately, the upper mids have metallic timbre, and it can be quite noticeable on some genres of music, especially acoustical music where you have brass instruments or woodwind instruments and pianos and guitars and strings that have higher reaches into the octaves. They really come out and sound artificial and very glassy and glary, and can at times sound tinny in the lower mid-range. Unfortunately, the detail retrieval and resolution is very similar to the bass in that it's not really going to give you anything spectacular, but also it's not going to disappoint. It's just kind of average for the price point. And then the resolution, the upper mids in the resolution are a little bit too forced and forthright and can sound a bit stretched and too forced and in your face, and it can be a little bit scratchy, a little bit glary and glassy sounding. Treble. Lower treble is very present, and then the rest of the treble kind of rolls off and doesn't extend extremely well. I find that the treble, like the mids, is very aggressive and very shouty in the lower treble regions, and then as it tails off, it is okay. Tone and timbre, very much like the mids in that it's artificial sounding, has a glassy, glary, somewhat tinny type of sound, and doesn't have a lot of note weight. And I find that unfortunately that metallic timbre is still very evident. So the QT9 Mark III bass, mids, and treble, very all over the place, not really cohesive, not very balanced, and extremely thin note weight. You can kind of help it out a little bit with warmer sources and foam tips, but it's not the most natural sounding. Soundstage of the QT9 Mark III is not really that wide. It is kind of like right around here, and it does okay with tracking. You can follow things across the stage, and you can go, it's right in this neighborhood. Oh, it changed. Oh, it moved. Oh, these things are zipping across the stage, and you can follow things around. Depth-wise, it's a little bit on the shallower side. It's not the deepest of stages, but you can read in a couple of rows. And then overall, the placement of things is fairly accurate. You can go, that's coming from my right and going across the stage. That's going from the left. And layering is fairly decent. Everything is given its own space. Everything is given its own little, that's right there, that's right there, that's behind, that's in front. And it does a good job of staying defined in its placement and layering. You can diagnose the stage fairly easily. Detail retrieval is average at best for about the $290 price point. You're not going to miss anything, but you're also not going to really explore anything new in your music. And then resolution. Resolution in the bass is fairly good, and I had no complaints there other than note weight, which we've already discussed. But when you get into the upper mids and treble regions, it becomes very glassy, glary, tinny, and very forthright, and it's an extremely aggressive presentation of details. And also I find that it's not very well defined, refined, and focused in the upper mids and treble regions, and resolution struggles. Tone and timbre, the bass is good. I find that the bass has nice natural tone and timbre. Just wish I had better note weight and a more density. Mids and treble really struggle in this regard, and they have a very metallic timbre to them, and they're also very lacking in note weight, especially upper mids and treble regions, and I wish that there was more body. As mentioned several times throughout this video, using a warmer source and using foam tips will help improve that to a degree, but then they're still not the most natural sounding, and that metallic timbre is still evident. So, the Rose Technics QT9 Mark III. Yeah, I struggle to really enjoy these. I find them not to be very pleasurable, and they're extremely picky on what sources that you use. And if you're looking in the $290 price point for a one dynamic 4BA IEM, I got two that I'll recommend to you that I enjoy a lot more. So the first one is the Ziigaat Estrella. The Estrella has better tone and timbre, very much more natural and accurate sounding, and the cohesion and balance and evenness throughout from the bass, the mids, and the treble is more accurate and true with the Estrella. Also, the bass has more note weight, more body, more thump. Sub bass is more evident. Mid bass and upper bass are not tucked. They have nice presence about them, and they have this fullness and overall. The mids are more natural and organic sounding and present with more note weight and body. There's better density in the mids, and vocalists and instruments sound more natural. And then the treble extends nicely, and there's good evenness throughout, adding a nice energy sparkle without being too forward and being too shouty and aggressive. And then the soundstage of the Estrella is wider and more pinpoint accurate in its placement of things, has a deeper stage, and is better layered and more accurate throughout. Overall, the Estrella is significantly more of an improvement over the QT9 Mark III, and I would definitely take the Estrella over the QT9 Mark III. Next, coming in at a lot lower of a price point, kind of closer to the sale price of the QT9, is the Kara from Tanchjim. And the Tanchjim Kara has significantly better presentation as well. It has more bass impact and slam and is more detailed and resolving. Also, the mids have a more natural, organic feel to them. And the treble is well controlled, extends nicely, has just enough sparkle and energy in them as well. And I find that the Kara has a little bit better of a stage, a little bit wider, and a little bit more direct in its placement, a little bit more accurate. It follows things along better, has better depth and layering. And overall, I find that the Kara, even though it is more analytical leaning and is more of a stage monitor, is significantly better and more improved than the QT9 Mark III from Rose Technics. So the Rose Technics QT9 Mark III, something different, but this presentation, it just doesn't do it for me. It has too much harshness, too much glary, glassy tinniness, and the note weight is just too thin, and overall the bass just doesn't drive home and doesn't have impact and slam, and I just find that it's lackluster in its presentation, especially for its price point of $290, and even gets beat out significantly by some competition at its sale price. So I really can't recommend the Rose Technics QT9 Mark III. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on the screen, subscription links and notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information regarding how you can contact the channel, follow the channel, support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, I want to thank my supporters through Patreon, YouTube memberships. Thank you very much for all that you provide. And also, I want to thank all of you who give one-time gifts. It is much appreciated as well. If you are interested in supporting the channel, there's various ways that you can do it. Through one-time gifts, PayPal, Venmo, YouTube, and also you can do monthly subscriptions with Patreon and YouTube memberships where you can get early access to videos. Also, you can get access to my Discord server, which is listed down below. There is a link there, and there's various types of lounges and chat rooms that you can select. Some are private for YouTube members and for Patreon, and then others are open to the public. So feel free to check out my Discord server. Come on over and join the fun. The link is down below. Also listed down below, there's all kinds of other information, gear recommendations, music recommendations, and all kinds of other things. So check out the links below. And lastly, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.